afternoon, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of the College of the Arts and Sciences and the Arts and Sciences Alumni Society, I'm proud to welcome you all to today's event. I hope that you and your families are staying safe and healthy. It's a pretty day here in Columbus, so I hope the sunshine is where you are too. My name is Daniel Rodriguez, and I'm a proud alumnus of the College of Arts and Sciences 2017. I'm also a member of the Arts and Sciences Alumni Society Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, as well as the Vice President of Membership for the Latinx Alumni Society. Please note that all attendees are muted and your video is off. Throughout the webinar, we encourage you to submit questions by clicking the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. Thank you for joining us today to read and discuss the adventures of Chupacabra Charlie, with the author Frederick Luis Aldama. Dr. Aldama is a university distinguished professor in the Department of English and the Department of Spanish and Portuguese. He is also director of the Latinx Space for Enrichment and Research, or LASER. Dr. Aldama, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. I just need you to enable my video. There we go. All right. Yay, welcome everybody. I'm so excited to be here to share this adventure, Chupacabra Charlie and Lupe, and well, the adventure of them telling me their story and me kind of writing it down and then bringing Chris Escobar in to help with the illustration. Yeah, a really kind of remarkable time for this story. It speaks to so much that's happening right now in our lives and our communities, but it is an adventure story, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started with the adventures of Chupacabra Charlie. The adventures of Chupacabra Charlie, and we will have time after for questions and answers, discussion. But yeah, let's get into this. The adventures of Chupacabra Charlie. Wow, so exciting. My name's Charlie. I'm a chupacabra, one of those creatures from made-up human stories, a monster, except I'm the real deal. I live with Mama Lula and Papa Rolo. We live above the humans in a cuarto de azotea. A cuarto de azotea are these little brick rooms that are built on the top of buildings in places like Mexico. And I include a glossary at the end of the book, so you can always go back to that if you want to. But yes, we live above the humans in a cuarto de azotea. Just before I was born, 10 years ago, Mama Lula and Papa Rolo found this spot. With the clutter of dust and abandoned old cosas, things, they knew it would be safe for a newborn Charlie. From our home in the sky, we can see far, far away over the wall and into land they call Estados Unidos, the United States. We can feel the wind. I wake, wipe the sleep from my eyes, take a quick shower, then sit for my desayuno, my breakfast. With Papa Rolo, all those left behind cosas come alive. The chalkboard with words and numbers, libros, books open to magical adventures in other lands. I'm 10, and I've never seen beyond the wall. I want an adventure. I want to battle a cyclops and slice through an army of giants. I want a friend. So tonight I will go find my adventure. When my parents start snoring, I tiptoe to the roof edge where I hear a young human voice from the window below. Like a brave monster slaying hero, I swing, then twist my body from roof edge down through window sill. A young human looks over, more surprised than scared. Hi, I'm Charlie. I live upstairs. ¿Cómo te llamas? I ask in my best Spanish. I'm Lupe. Did you just move here? Yeah. She hands me a puppet. We smile at each other. Do you like adventures? What kind of adventures? Come on, I'll show you. It's late now and our families are fast asleep. Lupe and I grab a shoulder sling bag, fill it with leftover bacon quesadillas and a couple of cans of Humix. Quesadillas, those tortillas with cheese melted inside of them. She grabs her skateboard. I grab my kick scooter. We race down the shadowy hallways as we make our great escape. Flashing lights, blasting norteño beats, zooming cars, humans of all shapes, sizes, and smells. We scoot and skate over bumps and cracks as I lead her in the direction of the wall. Sidewalks stop and dirt begins. Coyotes howl their ancient sounds to the shining full moon. As we inch up to the wall, we twirl around a swirl of people curled up asleep in the shadow of the wall. Lying in a dust heap at the feet of the wall, we hear the cries of niños lost and never found. Niños is for Spanish for children. We hear a rumble, then a murmur. The wall is speaking to us. They need your help, Lupe and Charlie. Follow the coyote. She will lead you to a tunnel. Tell the snake who guards it that the wall sent you. Then what, we ask the wall? Then what, we ask the wall? And I want to, there's some sort of stuff that goes on here before, and for some reason my slides aren't including them. So I'm going to read a little bit from my book here and stop share. For some reason, the slides aren't working properly. And then we'll jump back into the slides. So I'm reading from the book itself right now. And sidewalks stop and dirt begins. Coyotes howl, as I mentioned. We inch up to the wall. We twirl around and swirl. We want adventure, so we agree. We must climb. We must try our best, grabbing metal edges. But we slip over and over again. We fall to the ground, exhausted. Dang it. Que lástima. So they're trying to climb the wall and they can't do it. Oh my goodness, they almost give up. They're absolutely exhausted. And this is lying in a dust heap at the feet of the wall. We hear the cries of the niños and they want to go rescue them. As the wall says, the tunnel leads to el otro lado, the other side. The wall leads to the other side. I'm going to take the video off here. So sorry for this. So that we can see properly the story here. So yes, they're at the wall and they need to decide what they want to do with the wall. The tunnel leads to el otro lado, the other side of the wall. Here you'll follow the dried out river till you find el Señor Paletero Man. He has the llave de plata, the silver key. You'll know what to do once you have it, but beware of the big people in green. Like dragons, they will shoot fire and smoke at you. We can't believe our luck. We're going on a real adventure. Lupe and Charlie going on a real adventure. So Lupe and I do as we are told. We follow the coyote. We meet the snake. She grants us safe passage to el otro lado, the other side, and shows us the tunnel we must crawl through. They meet the snake and she tells them how to get to the other side. We crawl on our elbows and knees for a long time until the tunnel spits us out on the other side of the wall. Under the bright moonlight, we find the path of the dried out river. We find El Señor Palitero Man with La Llave de Plata. Lupe and Charlie, I've been waiting for you. You must take this key and free the niños. The big people in green keep them locked in cages allá. They meet El Señor Palitero Man, and he gives them the big silver key, the magic key. But their adventure continues. Their adventure continues, and they reach the children in the cages, and we creep around to the other side of a big rock, and we spot the big people in green. They spot us too. Flashing lights, ladridos, barking dogs, gnashing teeth. We see the cages and we run to them. Lickety split with La Llave de Plata. Lupe clicks the key in the locks, opening them all. The niños all shout, corran, 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 run, 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 scattering all directions. We all escape. Lupe and I run for the wall. But we can't find the snake or the coyote or the tunnel. How will we get home? Lupe asks me. How will we get home? They continue on in their adventure, and I'm going to just move us yet again to our book. We were cold and tired, so we sit on the ground. We have to be home before morning, before our parents notice we're gone. We need to find El Señor Palitero Man, I tell Lupe. They need to find El Señor Palitero Man. We walk quickly, retracting our steps from earlier in the night, and we find El Señor Palitero Man. We freed the niños, but we need to get home before sunrise, El Señor Palitero Man, I tell him. With so little time, the only way is to fly, he says. But you're in luck. My friend, El Señor Big Bigote, has the biggest mustache in the land. He can whisk you back to your familias in the nick of time. The path of the 3 prickly pear cactus will lead you to him. El Señor Palitero Man tells them. As we're leaving, El Señor Palitero Man hands us a giant jar of pickles. You'll need to offer him this, brave niños. He hands them the big jar of pickles. Hurrying down the path of the 3 prickly pear cactus, we find El Señor Big Bigote with his head tucked under the hood of a '67 Chevy Impala. El Señor Big Bigote, would you fly us across the wall so we can be home before dawn? We beg him. And then we offer him the giant jar of pickles. We offer him the giant jar of pickles. He accepts the big jar of pickles. With such a gift, how can I refuse? And I want to try out my latest pickle-powered combustion engine. Let's go, niños. With seatbelts fastened and windows down, El Señor Big Bigote zips us through the sky. We search down below us for my cuarto de azotea in the sky. Finally, we see it. We land. Lupe disappears over roof's edge. I slip into bed, smiling big. I know this will be the first of many great adventures. And that is the adventures of Chupacabra Charlie.
Well, what an exciting adventure we just went on, everyone. And I have a few questions I'd love to ask. I know, so Charlie's a chupacabra, and a chupacabra is a monster, but he's a lovable monster. We want to get to know him and go on adventures with him. I wanted to ask why a chupacabra?
Why a chupacabra? Yeah, that's a great question. So already when I was a kid, I had this image of a chupacabra flying a pickle-powered Hickenbacker, which for me was like a kind of flying machine. And I kind of gotten this idea, this story in my mind because my abuelita would tell me that whenever our chickens, we lived in Northern California, whenever our chickens would get mauled or hurt at night, or we would hear the screeches of the chickens, that it was a chupacabra that had come to get them. And this was partly, my abuelita, my grandmother, wanting to tell us these stories to keep us kind of inside at nighttime. But for me, it was like really this amazing kind of like thing from my imagination. And it wasn't until I read in the last couple of years about kind of our family members and heard from even community, our family, about not just deportations, but also folks from, trying to come into the United States, especially in the last couple of years, and the children being separated from families and so on, that I thought, gosh, I really want to like go back to the chupacabra story and see if I can create an adventure, a fun adventure for kids, but that involves the freeing of children from cages. And so that's where it all kind of comes in. It comes in from like hearing the stories as a kid, and even kind of the first story that I started to create myself as a kid, where I had a chupacabra, and then kind of bringing that back into today. But Daniel, that's a really rich and important question as well, because I think for many of us that have been kind of told that we're kind of, different, we're kind of in a way sort of alien or monstrous, that what better way to kind of show the world, tell the world that monsters are actually, deeply human and have, great sort of intellect and complex emotions, and can be heroic, epic, figures like Chupacabra and Lupe as they go on their adventure to save the niños from the cages. So making the protagonist a monster, but a monster who is as complexly, kind of richly human as me and you, Daniel.
I mean, that's really important because as you look on TV and anytime you turn on the news, it's a lot of depictions of, worst of, or the way that people are painted in the worst or in their most dire state. And a lot of times it's this whole, they're monsters, and I think we put that monster title to things we just don't understand. But to your point, it's a lot of it's the same rich, textural, fully human people. Even if they look like monsters or we think of them like monsters, they're not monsters. They're mothers and fathers and daughters and brothers, just like everyone else, which I think is even more powerful when we talk about this topic of children in cages, because that's a pretty heavy theme for a children's book, but I think it's incredibly important, and it certainly ties into the theme here. So if you wanted to talk just a little bit more about, what the importance about talking about what's going on at the border and depicting that.
Yeah. Daniel, and even before we get into that, I wanted to just share, for some reason, my slides were missing some pages, but there's a couple of really important pages here where Chupacabra Charlie is sitting around the table with his Mama Lula and Papa Rolo, and they're telling him stories of, the old days, and talking about that moment when the weather changed and food ran out. And Papa Rolo shares his stories about growing up in Chihuahua with his 12 siblings. And Mama Lula talks about swimming with the tortugas in the big, beautiful water, but how kind of without saying it, climate change and kind of all the things that we do without thinking about it as human beings are making it, difficult to kind of live on the planet. And so, they're forced from kind of, living from the land and the sea, paparolo on the land with corn, and mamalula from the sea, to find, themselves living in an azotea up in a city there at the border. And they're forced, even here on the same page, to go dumpster diving for scraps of food. And I'm sorry that the slides, I have no idea what happened there, but anyway, but they make the best of it. And here's a kind of moment where Chupacabra Charlie is having kind of a regular everyday in the city, and learning to be a good chupacabra, right? To have proper etiquette, etc. And he's vegetarian, so he doesn't have fangs, which is also important for me. I don't want Chupacabra Charlie to be a monster that's like, kids are gonna be like, oh my gosh, he's too scary. But also vegetarian because it sort of sends another message about just kind of being respectful to the planet we live on, and really trying to find that place today where we can kind of be in synergy with all the life around us. And that gets to the point that you asked about the ICE detention centers right now. And it is heavy, but kids' stories are heavy. There's, they are adventures, but there's always something in children's stories that takes us to a place where we really have to think about the world that we live in. And so I wanted it to be fun. I wanted it to be an adventure, as you heard. I mean, gosh, it really is an adventure. And, they have all these obstacles that they have to kind of overcome, all these challenges. But yeah, the real hinge to the story is liberating those little ones that have been put in these detention centers, where siblings aren't allowed to be in the same ICE detention centers if they are a boy, a brother, and a sister, for instance, because they're gender segregated. And also where, the little ones, go for weeks and months, and now, like enduring months and months of not really being allowed to hold anybody because that's forbidden. So even the slightly older girls that are, in a detention center with, say, a figure like Lupe, if she were in a place like that, wouldn't be able to comfort her. But we also have little tiny ones in those spaces, and they don't get any comfort. And today we, know as well now that they've also messed up the tracking of the parents. So now we have a bunch of many hundreds of children who they can't locate the parents to. So yeah, a big tragedy that's happening in our life. And I'm hoping that the adventure, when you read it with your child, will ask the parent to kind of go to some of our resources. And Daniel, I know that you have, I sent you a link to the resources for this, to really kind of, if they don't already know, to learn about what's going on and to share that in a kind of fuller way with the children that are listening and reading the story with the parents, the guardians.
Yeah, yeah, so obviously anybody who's on the call and all those who register will be receiving those resources so you can read through. And in that context, it's very important just to see, that this is something that's happening. But I think this book is a wonderful vehicle to talk to your child about what might be a very difficult topic to talk about, and brought in a way that makes it, it is an adventure, and we need to solve this problem, and there needs to be a hero, and all of us can be heroes in educating ourselves about what's happening and wanting to do better for the next generation for the sake of our kids.
And Daniel, there's so many great books and authors, Latinx authors out there that are, Chupacabra Charlie is one of many, but I think of Duncan Tonatui's Pancho's Rabbit, where the rabbit, Pancho's rabbit, goes on a migration from, across Mexico into the US. And also, a lot of YA novels like Alexandra Diaz's Santiago's Road Home, Ernesto Cisneros' Efrin Divided. There's so many, and these are all on the resource page that was just shared.
Yeah, I mean, just supporting artists, Latino artists, Latina artists, Latinx artists, storytellers. I mean, storytelling is so central to our culture. And as you were talking about, Chupacabra Charlie sitting down with his parents and they were sharing stories, it brings back memories of myself sitting down with my own parents and my grandparents. And my grandfather, my mom's dad, actually wrote a book of children's stories when we were really little. And so I grew up reading his stories all in Spanish, and just these fantastical tales about, growing up and finding yourself and finding your voice and building courage. And I think Chupacabra Charlie and his adventures with Lupe, it speaks to a lot of those themes that you find in children's literature, but it makes it real. And I think it's difficult to kind of pull apart what's
Somehow I think we lost Daniel there. But yeah, I want to encourage people while we're waiting for Daniel to come back into the space to go to the resource page for this. And I'm going to go ahead and just comment to a couple of the questions in the Q&A. Will there be a sequel? Yes. And the sequel will be from with Lupe as the protagonist. So yeah, I set it up so that Chupacabra Charlie and Lupe, but this time it'll be Lupe who will take us on the adventure. And that adventure is really exciting as well and has many, many different kind of challenges that are overcome. And there's an introduction of another special character as well, but that's coming right around the corner. There's also a new book of mine that we're just finishing up and that will go into production in a couple of weeks called With Papa. And that one's actually aimed at even smaller children. And it's with Papa, and it's about the kind of moment that a little one is dropped on the doorstep of a Papa, and he raises this little one, and they go through all sorts of amazing things, and they learn how to even unzip the sky together. And for me, it was really a big response to going to libraries and not finding, first of all, having a hard time finding Latinx kids lit. And then secondly, having a really hard time finding stories about kids and their dads, Latinx kids and Latinx papas. And it's also got very kind of a nice Afro-Latinx influence, because I think it's important that we also show the world that our communities are very diverse, our Latinx community. And it's beautiful. Nikki Rodriguez is the illustrator on that. And we will see that this coming summer. Really excited about that. So thanks for those questions. And another question is, about explaining what the Chupacabra, the goat sucker, really is, and the various legends. So the Chupacabra is really, you hear it a lot in the Southwest, and each area, each region has a slightly different kind of idea of what the Chupacabra looks like. Some are a little more alien, for instance, than others, more slick and kind of, and but also Puerto Rico's, and also, we hear a lot about the Chupacabra. And like I mentioned with my abuelita telling me, it's really like the kind of the legend of the Chupacabra, even though it changes in different spaces, is really kind of there, like La Llorona and others of our legends that we hear, other myths, other stories when we're kids, both to kind of get us excited about, the sort of mythical, but also, there's always that kind of, this is a good way to kind of keep our kids in at night. But yeah, really kind of exciting mythological figures that exist in these different regions. And yeah, there's another question that just came in from one of our participants about the incorporation of Spanish words in the text and why I decided to choose to include Spanish. That's a really great question. And who is the intended audience? Bilingual readers, English monolingual readers, or both? And do you think your use of Spanish represents translanguaging? Wow, that's a really good question. Yeah, so I think our country, gosh, language in our country has become so politicized, and language in the end is all about opening ways of being able to connect and communicate with people. So in my book, we should be speaking as many languages as we possibly can, and from the very beginning, with the minute we're born into the world. So this idea that somehow Spanish, like when we moved from Mexico City, and I was a little chavalito, a little boy, and the teachers told me that I couldn't speak that dirty Mexican, my native tongue, and it, literally with a ruler hitting my hand, kind of beat that out of me. I don't want that anywhere near our kids, our new generations, in any of our life. And also, it doesn't reflect our community in its most natural way, which is really kind of movement between languages, whether you're bilingual or not, listening to the Spanish responding in English or in both Spanish and English. So I really wanted that to be a part of this world, and I wanted to share that possibility of how language can kind of move, and how it moves in our community in the story. And of course, there are things in Spanish that are really like significant, and have a certain style and have a sound that we don't have in English. So there's also the style element of bringing that in. But I did choose to use a glossary at the end because I realized that there are some readers, that might not be bilingual. And what better way to bring them into the beautiful space of Spanish than to have that glossary?
I think, I mean, that closes on a beautiful note that, language is meant to usher people in. It's not meant to build borders, not to build walls. And we should all look to the next generation as, being more global and welcoming of those that are different, because, we derive a lot of strength in our differences, especially in this country. So I want to thank you, Dr. Aldama, for your storytelling and your gift. And I want to thank all of our guests here today for sharing some time and listening to a wonderful story. We're going to be sending this recording out to everyone so you can read it again. You can also buy your own copy and read it home with your young one, and we'll be sending out those resources as well. So I want to thank everyone again on behalf of the College of Arts and Sciences Alumni Society Board. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Take care. Stay safe.